Hello, I'm Alistair Freeland. I'm very pleased to be joined for this webcast on vegan diet by Dr. Neal Barnett. He is president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine in Washington, D.C., and also adjunct professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine. Dr. Barnett, thank you so much for sharing your precious time.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Dr. Barnett, you have published extensively on the health benefits of vegan diets. Based on your current knowledge, for which conditions do you particularly recommend a vegan diet and why?
Great question. And maybe I should preface my comments by saying that a vegan diet, meaning a diet that excludes animal products, is exactly the opposite of the diet that I was raised to consume. I grew up in North Dakota. Fargo is the town that I grew up with, made famous by the movie of the same name. And so my extended family raised cattle, and my father didn't particularly care for the cattle business. He ended up leaving it and became a physician. But that was very much the way we continued to eat. So anyway, the reason that I mention this is that all my biases were going in that direction towards steak and hamburgers and roast beef and all these kinds of things. And I didn't anticipate finding a vegan diet to be something that merited promotion. I was wrong. We have done extensive research on a number of issues. The first category might be what you call cardiometabolic issues: health of the heart, diabetes, obesity, hypertension, lipid problems. For all of these, getting away from animal products allows you to get away from animal fat. It gets you to healthy foods, all of which have fiber and healthy complex carbohydrates, and there's just no better way to tackle those cardiometabolic issues. But implicit in your question is that maybe there's more to it than that, and the answer is there sure is. From there, that led to research on Alzheimer's disease, which has been really challenging because you don't do randomized trials for the most part. It's mostly observational. But all the best evidence that we have from multiple sources suggests that the same diet that's good for your heart is also good for your brain, meaning that people who eat a lot of saturated fat, the fat that predominates in dairy and meat, they're at higher risk for developing dementias, particularly Alzheimer's. People who eat more vegetables and fruits do better. And then from there, we move to inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and others, autoimmune conditions. Plant-based diets are helpful there. And then finally, maybe the last category I might mention is hormonal conditions. These are hormone-related cancers, like breast cancer or prostate cancer. But not just those. Anything where hormones play a role, like for young women, dysmenorrhea, meaning the pain that comes with a monthly cycle, or at the end of a woman's reproductive years, menopausal vasomotor symptoms like hot flashes. Plant-based diets are integral to that. So it would be much easier for me to make a list of the conditions for which a vegan diet is not relevant and not helpful. And those might be if you're in an auto accident and you have a cut on your face or something like that. A vegan diet isn't going to make you heal faster. Doesn't matter how much asparagus you eat. Basically, a plant-based diet is the default diet for everybody. It's a healthful diet at every stage of life, and is really clinically very, very useful for so many of the conditions that we deal with in modern practice.
And related to the conditions you just mentioned, can you share with us maybe some of the recommendations for practitioners who want to help patients transition to a new diet?
How would a clinician offer this kind of diet to a patient and help them to step into it? We see this really on a daily basis in two contexts. One is our research studies, where we bring in people, specifically people who are not following a plant-based diet, because we're going to test how it works. And so every single one of them has to make a pretty big trend, or what feels like a big transition to them. And then the second context is we have a medical clinic where people are sick and they want to get healthier. They've got diabetes, they've got high blood pressure, whatever, and they want to get better. In both cases, we use a similar set of steps that turn out to be really, really easy. And we preface it all by making sure the patient understands why we're going to use a vegan diet. Their prejudice walking into it is that a vegan diet means that you have a taste for folk music and you wear tie-dyed clothes and have liberal views. And they have to come to discover that a vegan diet just means you're going to get away from all the animal fat and all the cholesterol and all the other bad stuff that's in animal products. And so, but they do have to understand what it's going to do. So for example, a person has diabetes. They have never heard what I'm about to tell them, which is that their diabetes did not come from eating carbohydrate, which is what they thought. If they thought, well, carbohydrate releases sugar and the sugar got in my blood and that's what elevated my blood sugar, yes, sort of. But the truth is that it started as insulin resistance, which means that the cells of your body, the muscle cells in particular, are filled with fat. The patient opens their eyes wide and says, what? How could that relate to diabetes? Well, you have to take about 2 minutes and educate them that the fat that they ate got into the cells, that stops insulin from working. And when your insulin can no longer escort sugar into cells because the cell is filled with fat, then I need to get the fat out of the cell for insulin to work. And then your blood sugar comes out. Okay, so it takes maybe about 2 or 3 minutes for them to understand. I've got high cholesterol level. Why do I have high cholesterol level? Because animal fat and cholesterol itself drive cholesterol levels up. That takes maybe 20 seconds for them to understand. Okay, once you've got past that point, now we're gonna make the transition. 2 steps. Step 1, 7 days, where I ask the patient or research participant or whomever they are to take 7 days, and during the 7 days, they don't have to get rid of anything. If pork chops are their thing, they're still eating them. But what we ask them to do is to try out the possibilities. Meaning, what would you have for breakfast if you didn't have bacon and eggs? If you had a totally plant-based breakfast, what would it be? And we give the patient a piece of paper and ask them to write down ideas. Okay, I can have oatmeal porridge, but to make it taste good, I'll top it with cinnamon and raisins or blueberries or sliced banana. Okay, fine. I might have pancakes, but I'm going to make them without eggs or dairy. Or I might have veggie sausage. I never tried it. They sell it at the store. You got a week, go to the store, buy it. If you like it, put it on your list. Okay, same thing for lunch, same thing for dinner. Okay, let's say my family goes out to our favorite Italian restaurant. And when we go there, I have spaghetti with ground beef sauce. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so I've got 7 days to come up with what I would have that's vegan. All right, tomato sauce. They call it marinara sauce. They have another one called arrabbiata sauce. That's Italian for angry, meaning that's the spicy, the piquant sauce. Okay, good. I liked it. It went on my list. Or we went to the sushi bar and found that there's vegan sushi that's made with cucumbers or sweet potatoes or asparagus or whatever without fish. All right, so the patient's job now is to take 7 days and check out the possibilities, put them on a piece of paper and come back and show it to us. A week later, they come back in and they're very proud that they found a huge long list. Step 2 is 3 weeks. Take that list and eat those foods. For 21 days, we're going to be completely vegan. No animal products at all for 21 days. And what you discover is that the patient's physical experience is really encouraging, meaning they're losing weight, their blood sugar is coming down, their blood pressure is coming down, they're feeling better physically. But their attitudes about foods are dramatically shifting. They don't miss chicken wings. They haven't had chicken wings for the past 3 weeks. They don't miss them. They didn't even miss cheese, which amazes them. So we always break it into those 2 steps, and I've never seen anyone unable to do it. And they always describe this transition as being not just easy, but in many ways life-changing for them.
And as now we see populations in and outside the US grow older, and there is an increased strain on our healthcare systems from these conditions that you mentioned before. How important is it that more people transition, as you just said, to healthy diets? And do you think we are already heading in a good direction, or are more interventions needed so that more people consume more plant-based diets?
Many people have the experience nowadays of going to a hospital and discovering that the doctors are all distracted. The emergency room personnel are distracted. They're distracted by a pandemic of COVID. There may not even be a bed for individuals. And that's compromising our medical care. It's taking attention away. It's taking research dollars away. If we didn't have COVID, life would be a lot better. Before we had COVID, we already had pandemics of diabetes, obesity. Most Americans are overweight now, and that's true of many other countries. Cardiovascular disease, a leading killer, cancer right behind it. Those pandemics have drained resources and taken doctors' attention away in a really unfortunate way. If the entire population of the world, if I could wave a magic wand, and the entire population of the world were suddenly eating a plant-based diet, those problems wouldn't go away, but they would be dramatically reduced. The prevalence of type 2 diabetes would be cut by 80%. Hypercholesterolemia, same story. Cancer rates would fall. Doctors would have time off. We would provide better medical care for the conditions where diet did not play a role if we weren't so distracted by these pandemics that we're having to deal with. And we're seeing two conflicting trends. One is that, frankly, the population in the United States, in much of Europe, and increasingly in Asia and many parts of Africa, is getting progressively less healthy, as measured by the prevalence of obesity, the prevalence of certain cancers, and also life expectancy. It's in some places starting to decline after many years of gain. We need to change these things. And to, I think, deal with them, to deal with all this effectively, it really means focusing on the cause of the disease. The cause of the disease is very often related to diet. Having said that, the other tendency is a much more optimistic one, which is, while all the indicators of overall health are in many ways worse, there is a very substantial subgroup of the population in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, in much of Africa, that wants to be healthier and is adopting plant-based diets or something very close to it. And to help them do that, industry has jumped in with products and product availability and better food distribution than we've ever had before, at least in some areas. And so the number of people promoting healthy books and healthy websites and blogs and all kinds of tools and resources to help people regain their health, that's bigger than it's ever been too. So that's a good shift.
The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine is very active in many fields, including nutrition. And if you look now back, we're at the end of 2021, what achievements are you most proud of this year? And could you perhaps also share with us some of your hopes and aspirations for next year?
Thank you. We've been working on a number of different fronts. We do a lot of clinical research studies where we bring in people, we change their diets, we see how they do, and we have to do that in order to see what works and what doesn't, how it works, how it applies, what its limitations may be, and we have to do that honestly. Frankly, the past few years have been more challenging than ever. The pandemic was not a big help. But in the middle of the pandemic, we actually did a research study on healthcare workers. One of the big Washington, D.C. hospitals that was drawn into the pandemic, just like every other hospital, we introduced a vegan diet for the hospital workers. These are stressed out people. They're arriving early, they're leaving late, they don't have time for a healthy lunch, they pick up something, some junk to eat, and on the way home they might, they're not really taking very good care of themselves. They don't have time to go to the gym, they don't have time to make dinner. We introduced a vegan diet at work, and all that meant was having vegan food available in the cafeteria and having just once a week a short session for them to get together and learn how to do it. And what we found was that even in the midst of a pandemic, people who followed a plant-based diet lost substantial amounts of unwanted weight, their cholesterol is improved. And when we measured their quality of life, which you can do using a standardized questionnaire, for many people, it kind of degrading as their health gets worse. What we found is that in the middle of the pandemic, their quality of life was the best it had been in a long period of time. And that's because they had challenges, but they were in charge more than they had been before. They had a sense of mastery and capability that made them feel a certain amount of confidence that they didn't have before. So that was fun and nice to see, and a good message. We started looking at some new ways of influencing hormones. We've been known for a long time for dealing with insulin and diabetes. And so we implemented started a new program looking not at type 2, but at type 1 diabetes, which is historically called the childhood onset form of the disease because it occurs in younger people and it's your body has stopped making insulin. But our theory is that while you'll continue to need insulin, you may need a lot less if you're on a plant-based diet. So that research has started, it's continuing, I'll keep you posted. So far, all signs are extremely positive. And one of the really big surprises was looking at vasomotor symptoms of menopause. When women hit about 50 and their body's not making estrogen anymore to any substantial degree, many of them get hot flashes that drive them crazy. And I wrote about this in a book called Your Body in Balance, where I described that a vegan diet along with soybeans ought to be helpful. And a woman happened to contact me and say, you knocked out my hot flashes in 3 days. And because that was so fast, faster than I had ever predicted, I got the details from her as to how she implemented my recommendations. And I then decided to do a randomized trial on exactly what she did, which is what we did. And we published it in the journal Menopause and found that we could knock out the moderate to severe hot flashes by 84%. And it was absolutely life-changing for women. So where's this going? All these things have to continue. We're going to continue to work on both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. For menopausal symptoms, we've done a confirmatory trial already. We're going to do some more to see how does this magical diet affect a woman's body, because we believe that a healthy diet that knocks out hot flashes, which won't kill you, might also reduce the risk of breast cancer, which can kill you. And we also suspect that this same kind of diet might also reduce the symptoms women have during breast cancer treatment. Many of them get hot flashes because of the treatment, the hormonal effects of the treatments that they're given, and many feel miserable with it. So those are things that we're doing over the short run. We're embarking on a new trial in endometriosis, which is one of the most common gynecological complaints among young women. And apart from research, you can't just let the findings sit in a journal and gather dust. We have to translate them into educational programs. So we're starting a program called One Healthy World, which has basically how to go to a plant-based diet in English, French, Spanish, Mandarin, and a special program for India, English language, Indian food. And that's debuting in the new year and will continue on a regular basis and will just grow. So those are some of the things that we're really excited about.
Dr. Bond, let me wish you and your team at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine continued success, and that you may achieve all your goals and more. And I also wish you an enjoyable and peaceful holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you, and you as well.